Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. In this next segment, we are going to show a selection of visual storytelling. These are videos that are edited by Anthony Basil Rodriguez. Anthony is an independent filmmaker, world traveler, ethnobotanist, and storyteller. This work continues to bring Anthony around the world in pursuit of research and documentation of rare plants, disparate peoples, and the flux of global society. All right, thank you. Take it away.
Quem viveu numa terra como essa, e a gente perder, é um trauma. A gente perder isso. Entende o que eu quero dizer?
You know, as you're going over the rainforest in a plane, you look down and you can imagine all this diversity, the morpho butterflies and the parrots.
Tem, claro, não tem nenhum que teria sumido, nenhuma cultura, nenhuma civilização, pelo mesmo motivo, esgotamento dos recursos. E a gente está repetindo.
Se a gente mudasse um pouco o olhar e olhasse para a natureza como uma grande aliada e uma grande inspiradora, eu acho que a gente iria mudar muita coisa do nosso jeito de lidar com o planeta.
E a gente sabe que uma das atividades mais agressivas para o meio ambiente é a agricultura. Mas já existe conhecimento e tecnologia para fazer diferente.
Para mim, a agrofloresta é isso, sistemas que são inspirados na natureza.
To me, that's truly taking the rainforest as a model, right? The structure of the rainforest grants the function of abundance, really.
And this is not so well known. Agroecology is a major tool in fighting climate change.
A ciência vem avançando muito na interpretação do conceito agroflorestal de maneira integral. A gente pode pensar a agrofloresta com qualquer tipo de arranjo ou de combinação do componente florestal com o componente agrícola, com o componente pecuário.
Há uns 10 anos atrás não existiam muitos filmes sobre a agrofloresta e a gente resolveu buscar modelos para filmar e para aprender também. Dentre as muitas experiências brilhantes que a gente viu por aí, uma chamou muito a nossa atenção, que foi a agricultura sintrópica do Ernest Goethe.
Viver de floresta e produzir alimentos na floresta, com floresta, posso mostrar que funciona.
A sintropia, ao contrário da entropia, é um processo que vai do simples para o complexo. E a agricultura do Ernest segue essa lógica. Todas as interações ali são no sentido de promover um balanço energético positivo no sistema.
Uma das características do Ernest é que por trás da prática agrícola dele existe um conjunto de pensamento muito sofisticado. É um conhecimento científico profundo, aliado a uma inteligência, a uma sensibilidade prática de uma pessoa que faz agricultura desde os 3 anos de idade.
E ele conseguiu sistematizar tudo isso de uma forma que os princípios pudessem ser replicados em qualquer lugar, independentemente do solo, do clima, do tamanho da propriedade.
A gente buscou alguns exemplos. Em Brasília, a gente conheceu o João e o Rômulo, 2 alunos do Ernest que estão disseminando um modelo de cultivo intensivo de hortas e floresta partindo de solo degradado.
Hoje, quando a gente olha o sítio deles, parece um pequeno oásis no meio de uma região que já foi muito degradada por práticas de agromineração, pelo fogo.
Então a gente tem que procurar um sistema para restaurar os ambientes que funcione e que produza e que retorne. Porque sustentabilidade tem que ser econômico, social e ambiental.
O foco do nosso trabalho aqui é recuperação de solo com produção de hortaliça e futuramente fruta, né?
A sucessão vegetativa com o espaçamento e a ocupação dos andares no tempo, e aí a poda das árvores, a poda das bananeiras, a poda das fruteiras. Esse trabalho da poda, de trazer o material para baixo o tempo todo, é o grande barato do trabalho do Ernesto, que eu nunca vi por aí.
O que a gente precisa é adequar tanto a questão do cultivo, ou seja, agronômico, para que a gente possa realmente produzir alimento, recuperar o solo, atender a demanda do mercado e que a gente possa ser feliz. A ideia é essa.
A gente já está aqui com 2 anos e meio. Esse sistema ele já tem a própria matéria orgânica dele só com as podas daqui. Eu já não preciso mais trazer matéria orgânica de fora, se eu não quiser. Não é uma perda de energia. Quando eu uso o adubo aqui, eu não estou jogando fora. É o contrário da agricultura convencional, seja orgânica ou não. Quando a gente aduba aqui, a gente pega 1 e transforma em 500. A gente não. A agrofloresta transforma. 1 em 500. Na agricultura convencional, seja orgânica ou não, a gente põe 1 e daqui a pouco tem 0,3. E daqui a pouco tem que botar 2, não mais 1. Né? Porque a gente não está trabalhando com a vida, com os processos da vida. Então aqui a gente usa o mecanismo floresta, que é o motor que gira e faz o planeta respirar e viver na agrofloresta.
No momento que eu colher aqui, o solo vai estar melhor do que ele estava antes.
Esse é o meu sonho. Vamos plantar floresta e vamos manejar a floresta, mostrando que o caminho para a floresta produz alimento e a floresta produz alimento.
E dentro disso eu me encantei com esse mundo de possibilidades de fazer ecologia na prática e não só da boca para fora.
In 1975, I came to Mexico as a graduate student from UCLA, and it was kind of a vacation, but it later turned into a vocation because what I stumbled upon was a pre-Hispanic culture still alive and well, living in the Sierra Madre Occidental in a little crack in the world because of the topography there, and they've maintained their culture for thousands of years. And so I recognized immediately, knowing the fate of so many other indigenous cultures throughout the world, that if someone wasn't going to step up and really try and help them navigate the rapids of social change that was upon them, that they'd just disappear into some museum basement or somewhere. Biggest message is that a culture that's so ancient and have lived in such an isolated location for thousands of years have huge messages for humanities. I think of them as safeguarding the seeds of humanity's future, not only the physical, non-GMO seeds that they've preserved, beans and squash and corn, of course, but seeds of wisdom, indigenous wisdom that was once a part of everybody's life on this planet. Information that's come down through the ages that these people have been safeguarding all these centuries, and it's definitely under threat. The evangelists, the mining companies, the agro industries, there's the alcoholism. There's so many things that are causing the people to give up this ancient way of life and lose their language. And when the last words of Huichol are spoken, not only a language disappears, but a whole way of looking at life and being on this earth and being caretakers of the earth, which is their big message to humanity. That goes with them. So it really is an SOS right now to the world. We need to embrace these people and to safeguard these seeds of humanity's future.
Ako si Maribel Remion ng Barangay Bato. Naging isa ako sa tinuruan ng permaculture kung paano ko ito gawin. Yung napag-aralan namin ng PDC Group, na-apply ko siya sa panahon ng krisis.
Mas marami yung good bacteria. Tapos, pag nabulok na siya, ito na yung nilalagay, tinitimpla namin sa pananim namin. Ito, every 1 week, hinahalukat namin. Tapos, pag nakita na namin na nag-dry, nilalagyan na namin ng tubig, binibisisa namin yun. Every 1 week din.
Pagdating naman sa soil, hindi naman kami ganong nangangamba na kakailanganin namin siya ng mga pampataba. Natitest na namin o nakikita ko na ang soil namin dito is mataba talaga siya. Kailangan lang natin siyang i-cultivate para siya matamnan. Kailangan lang ng tamang pag-aalaga sa lupa at saka sa paglilinis. So kahit naman paano hindi naman mahirap yung paglilinis. Meron ka lang bulo, itak or kaya yung rake para malinisan siya dyan. So papunta na yan doon.
Kaya po tayo gumawa ng nursery. Nataniman po ng seedling. Inaantay po natin na pumabot po siya sa tamang oras po na pwede siya tanin bago natin ilipat sa planner natin. Pwede rin po kami gumawa ng mga itong mga picture namin. Pwede po namin ibenta yung mga seedling namin sa ibang mga tao po. Mas maganda yung may nursery ka kasi pag may pwede kang itanin, dito ka na lang magpunta.
Tubuhan ko ng mga tatanin ko. Nursery na maliit lang. Maliit lang.
Sa pamamaraan ng mga culture, kailangan talagang mag-good. Kasi
siya, matapos ng musin, hindi matutol ka agad ang lupa.
Pataba ng mga gulay din ito pag na para hindi tutubo itong mga damo na to. Kasi sa mga igame, bukid namin o, para makape para sugar din namin, ang mamakala.
Ano po siya, sa water system po galing doon sa may pump po. Hindi ka na po mahirapan mag-output ng tubig.
Magtutulungan lang yung mga tao sa barangay dito sa Pantaon na kahit wala ng komunidad na tutulong sa amin. Tapos na ang sa akin lang is yung cooperative at saka community. Yun lang yung makakatulong sa amin. At saka din, salamat din sa Green Relief dahil sa kanila natutunan ko to.
Thank you all for being here, and beautiful to see these different examples of people in places around the world really taking responsibility for their own communities and weaving wellness within them. That was a gorgeous segment. Thank you to everyone involved. So next up, we are so excited to welcome Larry Santoyo into the program. He will be speaking to Unlocking a Tool User's Guide to Systems Thinking. All right, I'm going to bring Larry on. Larry is the Director of Education at the Permaculture Academy and reconnects our ability to directly access intuitive problem-solving skills of nature. Larry, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I am doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Wonderful. So I know we had been wanting to work out some things with the slides. Are you feeling set on that?
I think so. Let me see. I'm back on my machine here. How's that
There we
look?
go.
Does
What
that
a
look?
beautiful program. All right, well, I will, if you're all set, I'll let you take it away. Thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to hear your presentation.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to jump right into it here. I've been working today, so I didn't get to hear as much of the other programs as I wanted to. But I hope everyone's hanging in there. Hope it's gone really well for others as well. What I've been doing is every time I look at or I hear issues that people are having or problems that are coming up, I always think of like, oh, you should take a design course, and that I think that there's so many things that have been solved and are solvable when we really use basic design principles, from the design course. And I guess there's a lot of people in this audience that are familiar with permaculture courses and possibly practitioners and builders and whatnot. So one of the things that I've been working on pretty steadily for numbers of years, decades perhaps, is the idea of how we can get a resource base for ourselves, kind of zone one stuff, our nest. How do we make ourselves comfortable enough to be the resilience that we are talking about? How does it permeate into our homes? There's a lot of ideas about the things that are going on in terms of pandemic, big government, on and on. And it dawned on me while we were doing an exercise a couple times that, there's something to a basic, I guess, really rethinking how we're describing or defining what a community is, and also about the kinds of perceived impediments to accomplishing that. So I wanted to address some of those things immediately. But I'm going to jump into this program, and I'm going to start with an exercise that we do in my design courses. Okay, that I always ask people if they could describe to me what permaculture is, and to get an idea of not just to hear people talk, but to really get an idea of what language that we're speaking, somebody's direct intention about, whether it's nature-based, whether it is they're builders or they're healers or whatever it is. And I start as I listen to people and respond to their comments and their descriptions, I sort of embark on a little exercise at the same time. And I ask people what it takes, tell me what it would take to create a sustainable future. If we were going to build a village, if we were going to start a new country up, if we were going to do everything for ourselves the way that we wanted it, what would that look like? What would we need? Let's throw out the basic things first and go from there. So it's always that, people start with food, and we kind of scratch that on the board. And then, of course, water follows through. And then we need a knowledge base. And then we need a place to live. And how all those things look and feel and is going to be dependent on where in the country we are and where in the landscape that we are, of course. But this is actually the exercise that we go through. These are, common, the first 25, 50, comments are all about the same thing. Food, water, shelter, clean food, clean water, air, and then people start kind of going from there into spirituality, ritual. But there's always this component of how external all of these things that solve our needs, okay, as if it's far away or we don't have anything to do with it. So after both this exercise and me asking them what if they could define permaculture for me, right? We end up with this, what you're looking at now, and I call it the wheel of everything. And so everything that people have thrown out there is in here. And you could see if you're a permaculturist, you could see that I kind of separated the hard skills from the softer skills, right? The infrastructure from the invisible structures. You can see here education, legal structures, economic structures, health can go on both sides, sort of healthy living. And maybe if we had an emergency, we need a hospital. So infrastructure and invisible structures. So we're looking at these things right now, right? So as soon as we're done with this, I tell them that we are going to launch into some principles of design, and we're actually just going to repeat it over and over and over again. Okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to use those principles of design, and we're going to hit every single one of these items that goes around this wheel. And we're going to use the design principles, the permaculture design principles, to solve and make decisions about each one of these things. So there you go. That's what it is. So we're looking at the wheel of everything. And then of course, I tell people that, if somebody asks you again what permaculture is, draw them this. Okay, and it quickly tells us that it's not just about growing food, because food is one of the places in this sort of mosaic of things, right? And we know that there's nothing in this matrix here that is more important than any one other thing, right? So there's a lesson in itself too. So it's something that we can see right in front of us there. So as we go through it, right, it really becomes important to realize that what we're looking at here, okay, is really the resource and needs list, okay? This is a needs list of what we need to make our community sustainable, our household sustainable. We need these things to provide us, and so I'm looking at it, and I've been looking at it, and as we go around each one of these things, we're going to use design principles to solve our food needs, to solve water. We'll talk about cleaning water, collecting water, storing water, building shelter, retrofitting shelter, and then all kinds of different energies, all kinds of different transportations. I couldn't find a spaceship, but I found a spaceman. for a little icon here. And yes, I found a coronavirus for the health. But you can see that it is kind of representational of sort of these compartments of things that we need to supply us for our sustainable future, for our human settlement, sustainable human settlement. Okay, so we're going to come back to this, but what I want you to do is just look at this. There's about 10 to 20 things, right, that are basic to this, and we're going to come back to this because we're each going to take a place. We're each going to take a spot on the wheel here. Okay, so as we go through the design course, right, it becomes clear that we need to really set the stage or set the kind of the idea of why we're approaching design and design decisions this way, right? So I want to take us through that because this is pretty much going to support what it is that we're going to end up with here. So if whatever you've heard about permaculture, okay, whatever definition you've seen or you've found or you've heard of or you've talked about, I think you could throw it away. This is kind of concise to the point. This is my definition of permaculture design is decision-making and problem-solving protocols based on the patterns of nature, okay? And to go further with that, it also includes the convictions of a conserver society. And that conserver society is really where we're going with this, is where I want to take all of the ideas, all of the techniques, and all of the technologies that we gather and we hear about and we know why they work, right? We're gonna move away from those techniques and technologies, and now we're gonna use permaculture design to we're gonna use strategies of permaculture design. Not so much nuts and bolts techniques as much as strategies, sort of like navigating our way through a different landscape, a landscape of culture, social permaculture, for lack of a better word. And I'm always surprised at how the permaculture ethics have morphed over the years. This is straight from the Book of Morse, and I think this is really some of the best description of our work collectively that I've ever seen, and it's 30 years old and it still holds true. I remember saying to myself, as kind of a justification for participation, for encouraging people to support one another in recent unrest, of what Bill wrote, was care of people is really defined or further defined as to seek peace and guard human rights everywhere. And to me, that is kind of rock solid there. And then you can see that all of these are redundant. That's what I also love about it. It kind of shows that there's a backup system. It's stacking. It's all the principles rolled into the ethics. It's just like, if we care for the earth, we're a part of the earth, so we've already said that. But yeah, okay, we'll care for each other, and then we said we're going to do it. So the third ethic is that we do everything we can to put our surplus labor, intelligence, goodwill, capital to these ends. So it's just like reinforcing the next one, the next one, the next one. I always say that Plan B in permaculture is the successful execution of Plan A. So here it is. It's just kind of redundant. So once we get the idea of that, it's the ethics that are driving us. It's the ethics that keep us, on this path of sort of helps us with those decisions as we go through it. Caring for the earth, right? It's a big one. It wipes a lot of things off the table. The infinite silent universe of possibilities, it kind of narrows it down quickly, right? And if we're sticking to that, then, it's like, okay, so this is what we're going to choose from. And we just keep going from there. And the principles, again, kind of lead us to arriving at an answer, right? We arrive at solutions. We don't impose solutions. So here it is, ever since the Big Bang, right? Ever since the Big Bang, everything has, if you think about it, everything has been organizing in smaller and smaller units, right? It's expanding, and particles are getting smaller, and the idea of organizing in smaller and smaller units is really the thing that has intrigued me the most, with all these observations of nature. And then we realize that nature really does start small, right? I'm reminded, I think it was Toby Hemingway or one of my other partners used to talk about how trees didn't, they didn't co-evolve to perfect like one giant flower, right? They still have thousands of little perfect flowers, right? And that's what they depend on, right? Nature starts small. It organizes in small, successful arrangements, something that it can handle, something that it knows how to do, right? And then it repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats and gets better and better at it. And then it'll duplicate what it's doing, and then it'll learn from that and start solution multiplying. These are all incredibly brilliant lessons for us, okay? That we start small, successful arrangements, that we get used to what it feels like to be a success. That's a big thing. That is a big thing. Not all of us know what that feels like, okay? And then we can use that and leverage that to help us make other decisions, right? Based on what we know, and we are learning to trust our feelings and exploring the possibility that we may not intellectually know, but somehow there's an intuitive sense that we can begin to trust again. And that I think is an important thing. The other thing that I have noticed in organizing communities, I've also noticed this in, let's see, like jail populations, refugee camps, a lot of different situations where there may be stressors on a population. It doesn't have to be like, like scary natural disaster or high loss of life, but just sort of the organization. And I've always thought of that too, about how many people we really know. How many people do we know? How many people do we interact with? And how many people does it really take to sort of support us? Like, how many people would that take? Well, it turns out that there's a study, Dunbar, and a lot of us have heard of this, Dunbar's number, right? It's like most species, the number of the numbers in their social structure, a stable social structure, is directly related to the size of that organism's brain. Okay, so us as humans, we, as it turns out, we can know 100 people. And if you think about it, pretty well, you can identify 100 to 150 people, right? More than that, you might think you might know, but it's like most of us, it's like that is our actual capacity, right? That's our actual capacity at knowing somebody, or knowing the crowd, or knowing our daily routine. You might not know them by name, but you know that they belong there. And that's something that a patterning response to our environment that we train ourselves to do. Right? So it turns out that social orders for humans are 100 to 150. Well, that's interesting, because what I have been working to figure out in terms of small working groups, right, getting things done, building primarily, shelters, but they're, applied to just about everything. Um, what are those numbers? What is a good working size? Where does that lie? And I have seen, and now we have found that it really is 100 people can support 100 people, which is it's not surprising that it fits within those Dunbar numbers, but it is a relief at a certain point, and we'll kind of arrive at that again later, hopefully. But the idea that I want us to think about is, like, if there was 100 of us, right, and if it takes 100 people to support 100 people, what exactly does that mean? Like, out of 100 people, how many of us would have to be, say, gardeners to feed 100 of us, right? It turns out that, some of us are pretty damn good at gardening, and some of us learn really fast. A lot of us want to know, so that increases the learning curve. But it really only takes, a handful of people, 5 people, 10 people, if you don't know what you're doing, can really eventually, in a short order, produce enough surplus to feed the rest of us, right? So it's not like everybody has to be a hunter-gatherer, right? So then if you kind of break it down, like, out of 100 people, how many of us would have to be a doctor, would be a dentist, would be a seamstress, would be a therapist, or whatever it is, right? And then again, thinking about just those numbers, right? I don't know what everybody does, but there's a lot of trades, right? Trades, crafts, livelihoods that depend on a certain amount of clientele, that depend on a certain amount of contacts and a certain amount of new people as well, right? But it turns out that most livelihoods, really, you can make a pretty decent living by whatever the services are. We could break it down later, or you could look at the way that you're doing it, or what you do, and if you're a therapist, how many clients could you serve? Could you serve more than 100 at a time? Could you serve, like, if you were automobile repair, computer repair, any of these things? Really, it seems to be a pretty sweet number. Okay, now there's something else about these numbers that I'm also intrigued about. So, and part of it is our willingness to try things in a group that size, right? Because evidenced by, we do it already. Okay, you already live in a community of 50 to 150 people. Okay, usually I ask people for a show of hands, who wants to live in a community, right? It's just, I'm setting you up. So I'm going to spare you that this time, but it's like, you already live in a community. Okay, we do function this way. I know you're an important person. I know you've got a lot of things going on, but you really only interact with 50 to 100 people to solve, those things on the wheel of everything, right? How do you get your food? How do you get your clothes? How do you get your fuel? On and on and on. Okay, so we already participate that way. So what I'm getting towards is, what if we did that intentionally? What if we looked at it differently and tried to fill the blanks, right? Even, let's determine what the blanks are. What are those spaces? What does that look like? And that's really where I wanted to take this. And the idea of us, sort of thinking about the way that we participate, and then making it a little bit more intentional. Let me see what I've got here. Let's go to, okay, so here we are. You can see that sketch again, the wheel of everything there. Okay, so what we're going to do this time is we are going to look at each one of these things on this wheel, right? Each one of our, in terms of methodologies of design for permaculture, there's a really helpful exercise and methodology of design that we call resource and needs inventory. This is basically a resource and needs inventory. Let's talk about the needs first. What does it take to create a sustainable human settlement, okay? So we talked about that. We will need food, okay? Some of us will need lots of food. We will need water, okay? Shelter, you get the idea. Now we're gonna throw out things, information, education, a learning center where we can get more skills, some way to commerce and trade, conduct commerce and trade. We're going to need some kind of habitat restoration efforts. Health, of course, it's like being healthy, and then what if there's an emergency? What if, somebody fell or broke something, or, so there's those kinds of emergency response and recovery, rescue, each one of these, let's say, hubs can represent, a dozen things, okay? We'll break it down a little bit, but all I'm trying to do is give us kind of this gross generalization of what we actually need to do that, to solve our needs, right? What does it take? So right now, I want you to be thinking, as we go through the wheel of everything, is let's see, how do I solve my shelter needs? Well, I've got a house, or I rent a house, or I'm couch surfing, or I live in my car, or so each one of these things is solved differently, and most likely through a group, a collaborative effort to solve it. A water company, a few growers that that we talk to at the food co-op, and then the farmers market, and then sneak into Costco and get the other stuff, or Trader Joe's, or whatever it is, right? But each one of these things, how do you do that? I think that we could make a list, right? How do you solve transportation? Not only that, how does your transportation solve its needs? Like, where do you get fuel, and what kind of fuel is that, right? So we're going around here. Now, at the same time of examining what these things are, this is waste management, right? And there we could just improve so much, especially in urban areas. There's just so many resources at hand and sort of going to waste even. But the idea is, how do we solve these things? How do we participate in them? Okay. And at the same time, I want us to look at this as not just a needs list, but there's something associated with each one of these items, and that is a resource list, right? That there's actual name and, address, phone number, email, whatever, code, smoke signal, secret handshake, some way to communicate with people, right? There's a list of people that serve these services, these skills, produce these products, create these things, okay? And I want us to think about that. And then I want us to think about who we are. Are we one of those people? Are we one of these people? Can we do that? Do we know anything about legal systems, or energy systems, or arts, and entertainment and music and dance, and ritual spaces and ritual times, and so here we have what we have established is a needs list, and now I want us to think about assigning names and addresses and to each one of these things. You see where we're going? It's like we're going to instantly have a directory, right? So then when you need help with your transportation, we'll have a directory immediately without hardly even trying, right? Of the people in our network, right? And the more things that we can combine, the more functional relationships we can add, the better off that we're going to be. So we'll just keep going through here and start looking at this. And then actually start thinking about, what would it be like to get rid of the work that I'm doing I love my boss. I love the people that there, but you know, let's face it, it's a stupid shit job, you know, and a lot of our jobs are just like, why are we doing this? Like, what is it really doing that good, you know, for the world, for us, for, you know, or is it really killing me? Is it really eating away at me? You know, and sort of like, oh, I've always been interested in growing grains or in free range animals or knowing more about, you know, aquaponics or whatever it is. When we go through the permaculture design course, we spend a little bit of time on each one of these spots around the wheel, and we talk about techniques and technologies and how we are using natural patterns to help us decide on those things. Right? So the interesting thing here is that that's where we go next, right? Okay, we want to learn how to do these things. We want to offer these skills, or we do these things already. You're a musician, you're an entertainer, you're an analyst, you're an economist, you know, you fix electric vehicles or gas vehicles. Right? So let's examine each one of these things and get people to write down their names. Who knows anything about water? Who can we contact about water harvesting or water storage or rainwater catchment, or, you know, and then we start, okay, what about shelter? Anybody? Nobody over here? There's got to be educators. There's a lot of skills banks out there that we just need to start inventorying and start working our way through that. You know, it looks like we've got a little bit of attendance here on the food area. It's always the most popular. And then people realize how hard it is, realize that we don't all have to be there, and then it kind of trickles away. But the idea then is that we are using the resource, or excuse me, we're using the needs list to create our resource list. Okay? So out of that resource list, right? Out of that resource list, right? We are going to try to solve our needs through local resources. Okay, so I just pulled the things around the wheel out and made a list of them, and you can see these little wheels of 50 to 100 person networks. You can see them all overlapping each other all over the city. Try to give you a visual of that. It doesn't all have to be on one piece of property to be a community. It doesn't all have to be, you know, everybody shares the same ideals. You know, we just have to serve, you know, hopefully we're working with people that still trust and put their energies using the ethics that we described of caring for the earth. Okay, so that leaves a pretty wide open area, right? And interest and protocols that we don't even know, and we would become curious about. But you see, it's like it doesn't all have to even be in the same block. That's why I put a map in there. There's far reaches even, because some of us actually travel the length of the state in the course of the week, or some of us travel back and forth through the county. So picking up something on the other side of town is not that big a deal for now, right? So we could incorporate that, and knowing that just like natural systems, our system can begin to change and work and have those kind of different ideas. You see auto stuck in there in the middle of all this, right? So all of these are actual people with services and skills. Each one of these little networks, and there could be dozens of them, hundreds of them, that we start to look at. Okay, so this is purely academic here, but I wanted to illustrate a couple of things. So if we were to take those lists, right, and just kind of go through the drill, right, where if we're doing a homestead, we will inventory the resources. We'll look at how much timber they have, how much grassland they have, how much, you know, and then we'll look at the needs. Do they want animals? Do they, you know, do they need animals? Do they need more of this, that, right? And then we start to cross-reference the two lists, and we try to solve the needs with the on-site resources. And sometimes it seems simple and easy and like no-brainer, but a lot of times you'd be surprised at how many things are at hand, like right in front of us, and we still go to extremes and great lengths because of just the way that our pattern of behavior is, where we just bypass it. It's easier for us to do that. But just kind of looking at the resources we use and how that works, okay? So now the big thing here is that it's not plants and animals and items on the farm that are the resources. It's you. It's you and me and the neighbor and our skill set, our products, our services, and our skills. We are those resources in the community, okay? So that is starting, that's beginning the conversation where I want to take this, okay? We need to rethink how we participate even in our own community, in our own small little networks. Have we been only consumers? And could we be, just like natural systems, contributors, okay? Contributors to offset our consumption. Okay, you can see that this is our people are the resources of this ecosystem, right? And the needs list is similar to what we talked about before. You can see that each one of these things can be busted out into, half a dozen other things, transportation, pedestrian, pedal, paddle, powered, energy, access, distribution, on and on. So it's like pick a spot on the wheel, rethink what we have, and think about our own skill sets, okay? Let's see. Oh, so if we were to look at this again, okay, so we've got these resources and we've got these needs that either are going to be met with on-site resources or they're not. It's kind of a standard drill in our homestead designing approach, right? So we end up with two things that are going to be important. And those two things are the unmet needs off of this list, right, are just as, to us now, are just as important as those that are being solved, okay? And then same with our goods and services and skills. If we have more than we can use, then it puts us in a position where we have something to bargain, or we could start making, revenue streams that we hadn't before, right? But they are surplus to our needs, right? That has to sink in, right? We're not going to sell food if we haven't been fed, okay? We're not going to sell water if we're thirsty, okay? And now the needs list, okay? This is almost my favorite part. The needs that aren't met, okay, within our own system, right? What we do then is we can see that we could start scanning the neighborhoods, right? And participation in this is kind of is crucial at a certain point. But this is kind of what I'm getting at first here. Okay, so we end up with two new lists, right? The resources that we couldn't use, right? We have too many of this or that, right? Are now in a cache of surpluses that we can sell, trade, or otherwise negotiate with, okay? Now, this is, to me, the exciting part. The unmet needs in our 50 to 100 person network, right? We just shined a light on those businesses, those products, those services, those skills that are absolutely necessary in that 100 person network, right? That it's missing. It's missing. So it's like a big shining light on what business would actually be the most successful, right? Serving an actual need from that community. Okay, it's almost it's physics. If you supplied what was missing for that 100 person network, it is a guaranteed success. You've got success built into it because you're creating it, you're arriving at the need for it based on a real actual need. Okay? So I threw these in here. This is an aerial view illustration. here are the colored dots here of this kind of food forest area. And there's bananas, and each banana cluster has, associates around it. There's akira, there's maybe even pineapples. There's different things that people grow around their bananas. Not to mention a dozen different kinds of bananas. There's several different kinds of pomegranates, lemons, oranges, a lot of citrus in here. But the idea is this is like maybe 500 by 600 foot lot, right? Look at all these trees. Look at this food forest, right? It's amazing to look at that, right? And okay, over here, here's a list of our skills that we needed in one scenario. This is what was missing on our 50 to 100 person network, right? Okay, so let's look at this. And the point that I'm trying to show you here is that this 500 by 600 foot lot is not a farm out in the country somewhere. This is the neighborhood that I live in, right? This is, about 10 houses long and about, 10 houses wide, right? And they're 50-foot lots, so, somewhere in there, right? And look at the bounty right in the neighborhood. And this is without even trying. I mean, I've seen farms that are, 500 by 500, right? And they don't have this kind of abundance, right? And there's fruit, as you know, walking through these neighborhoods, there's fruit hitting the ground, okay? That's just like one kind of a concept, a truth about the power of just our local community, right? And over here, here's the list of the things that we're missing. And then once we started looking at it, this is actually, see the dots are not how many times we needed it, but how many we counted in our own neighborhood. Okay? This is on the other side of this neighborhood, right? On the other side of the hill are these people, right? They live there. We need their services, and we end up going off somewhere to work so we can drive another hour home so we can get money so we can pay somebody else to do something, where we could start rethinking how we're doing that, how we're solving our needs, right? And the thing that I really think is important here is that we get practice, okay, that we practice ourselves, right, at looking somebody in the eye and telling them they did a good job, or looking somebody in the eye and asking them to redo it that you're not happy, right? That whatever is uncomfortable in a larger group may actually be more comfortable, as we know, in a smaller group, especially a more intimate, friendly group that's trying to network amongst ourselves. Okay, so basically, that's kind of where I wanted to go with this. Okay, that we have these. Here's our list again, right? Our needs list, right? And as we look at some of these things, it kind of pops out at us, right? As we look at it, we get people to sign up, let's say, or put their names down, in each of these categories, right? So then we realize that we're pretty slim on people that do these services and skills, right? So and it was a no-brainer because nobody signed up for it. There's only one person or two people that signed up for it. And we know from using permaculture principles that we need more than that to have a sustainable system, right? We need backup systems. We need multiple functions for single elements, multiple elements for single functions. We're using that right here. This is it, right? So several people to supply these services for us. Not hundreds, but just a couple, right? So we've identified some areas that we are weaker in this particular circle, right? But
Thank
we've
you.
also identified where we're
Incredible. I really, really appreciate it. I just want to let you know that we're hoping to get a couple questions in before we moved on to our next segment.
okay.
Thank you. Has been such a succinct and clear overview. It's really
How many minutes?
blueprint, really. We're a little bit past our time.
Okay.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad that
Absolutely.
have this presentation up and seeing the design of permaculture and how people can begin to apply it to small village level settlements is I've never seen such a
Right in our own neighborhoods. Yeah.
Thank you. So
Excellent.
I'd love to ask you just maybe two questions very briefly before we take off. And again, it's such an honor to have you on the program. And thank you for putting your life's work into developing such a clear way to describe and educate people on how they can begin to bring this into their own communities. So
Great.
one of the questions that we have is, I love how you are so community minded when talking about cultivating and sharing our gifts. I agree that this is time to skill up and offer these skills in cooperation with others to fulfill community needs. For those of us who do not know our neighbors or are not active in our local communities, do you have any strategies we might use to get more connected even now during these strange times?
I think that the important thing is to have, like, seriously, to have something to offer, right? And to gather because we're sharing goods and services. I think that is a time-tested way to get uh, the comfort and reduce the anxiety that we need, where people are producing things and that they're trustworthy and that we're building trust and we're practicing all those things. So having something to offer, I think that it starts with us, right? That we get a skill set that we think is missing, or we offer to pick the lemons that are falling on the ground, or we, check on their dog when they're sick, or whatever it is. But this is kind of the idea of how easy it could be if we tried. And it's like we have to think of ourselves as partly responsible for it to change. So that's it.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then, looking at, you really outlined this blueprint for how a community of around, looking at this research of we can know around 100 people well and function in a community setting. And if there was a willing community that they would have so many tools utilizing this map that you've laid out. But within the idea in permaculture of transitional ethics of this is where we want to be, and also this is where we are now, and what is the way that we get from where we are now into this, in a way, idealized but very practical and accessible way to reorganize ourselves. What you outlined is very much not present in most places. So what are some suggestions or ways that people could begin to integrate this incredible knowledge and map that you've outlined into a community setting or a lack thereof that does not have that present?
Yeah, I think that it would be easy to get a template, and I'll make templates available, and just start filling in the blanks, and then leaving it around, passing it around, and you would be surprised at how quickly it gets filled, and how much conversation towards solutions in finding those empty spots would be. And then, there's all kinds of, interesting ways these days to finance those things. That's the part that is exciting to me, is like, I know so many people that are dying to get out of their job and they want to do something, useful, essential in their community. And this is it. This is how we find it. We solve something that's missing in our local network. And, that, just like nature, we actually choose more than one spot on the wheel, that we diversify ourselves, that way. So we're not just doing one mundane thing. But I think it's easier than you think, just filling in the blanks. Just take a checklist and see what it looks like. How do you solve these things?
Wonderful. And I would imagine that some of that would illuminate some of these connections that are already there. So it's through this design methodology and these questions that are being asked, we can begin to see where we already are connected and how those connections can support creating further ones.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. Let me just double check on our time. I think that we are getting pretty close to moving on, but I want to see if we
All
can get
right.
one more question in. And I appreciate again so much the work that you put into your presentation too, and the way that you describe it. Thank you so much, Larry.
No problem. Thank you.
So one more question. Where are we? How do you see permaculture affecting economic systems, not just ecologically focused?
I think that was the whole idea of this, is that it isn't that, I always say that, it's not that deep. It's really wide, but it's not that deep. There's a lot of options, but, this is it. How we're solving these things is using permaculture to do that. Creating business guilds, putting things together that go together. In nature, the waste product of one thing is the resource base of another. Why aren't we insisting that companies and manufacturing and can only operate that way? If you have something that's wasted, you can only have that if there's some other business that uses that waste system, and it wouldn't take that much coordinating. And I think that this is how we do it, and it's the kind of systems thinking that we offer our clients.
Wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really encourage everybody to come back and watch this replay so that you can delve more deeply into these subjects. And Larry, it's been such an honor to have you on. We really appreciate you very much, and you have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So as we move into this next segment of our event, before we end this session, I just want to bring us back to the space of this educational mission that the McKenna Academy is on, is to create these spaces where educators and students can teach each other and really have this space of discourse so that we can get in touch with our gifts and be empowered in the context of community to give our gifts and to help realize a more symbiotic biosphere. And so we ask for your support as we do this. Thank you so much to everyone who has shown up. Your contributions are literally what has made this event possible today. So we very much appreciate you. And also thank you so much to everyone who has been able to donate more than the suggested 25 and to help us create accessibility, because it's so important that this information is available to everyone and that we're all empowered with the community and the tools and the knowledge to be able to move forward together. So we do have a donate button at the bottom of the screen, and if you would like to make a significant contribution or offer a grant, you can email us at collaborate@mckenna.academy. And we have so many incredible programs that are up and coming and just waiting to be realized as soon as we have the resources to actualize them. So we very much appreciate your support and to continuing this collaborative journey of education and reweaving symbiosis within our lives and within the lives of all beings on this planet. So thank you so much. And we are going to head over to the next session now. So just hang tight for a moment. The screen's going to go blank for a bit, and then we'll bring you into the next one.